We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AV Rant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And, it was like 4 months of standard time, so get out of here. Get out of here, standard, 4 out of 12. Time for you to go. It's back to daylight saving time.
Yeah. I just want to remind people that I used to live in Perth where they don't have daylight savings time, and it was miserable. It was miserable because you'd wake up and the sun would already be like a third of the way into the sky.
Yes,
You're like, what? We missed, and then you come home from work and it's like way past sunset, 5 o'clock. Nope, you missed it. You missed everything. I don't know. People in Florida are talking about getting rid of daylight savings time. I'm like, if you can make it work so it's not like that, I will get behind it. But
just
other than that,
leave it on daylight saving the whole year round. That would solve.
That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying. But whatever. I don't really care. I just don't want to wake up with the sun. Like I used to wake up because it'd be so bright in my room. It'd be like daytime. It was terrible. Well, Jessica Jones came out, season 2. I didn't even know it was on the way. And then it was like, bam, there it was. Yeah, well, there it was. I watched a couple episodes. I haven't gotten too far into it. I can't even say I really know who the villain is yet.
They were saying it takes a while. That they were like, don't worry, there is a villain. It's just you'll have to wait to find out who it is. So
yeah, it's just sort of like going on. And there's not a lot. I mean, there's stuff happening. It's interesting. And I'm engaged, so I'm happy. I'm also trapped. Like, I can't move my feet. That's going to be a problem for a 2-hour podcast or hour and a half podcast. We are starting late. This is my fault. Dishes.
That's it.
A wise man once told me no one ever got killed while doing the dishes.
Well,
like,
we have way too many questions, so I'm for serious here. If you need to cut out at 11, I get that. Like, go, but like I will go on for an extra half hour because there are too many questions. We're not even going to get through what was left over from last week.
We'll see. Don't worry about that. We can do that. We always do an extra podcast. Don't stress yourself out about that. But I probably will. And okay, we have to say this because they happened last week. I got an email from somebody right after last week's podcast, and I don't remember the name of the person. And I'm not looking it up right now. But it was a very nice email, and he was like, "Man, you are exhausted all the time." Yeah. And I feel like, I've diagnosed your problem, which is that you have sleep apnea, and that's what's keeping you awake. And it's a very well worded and very well intentioned email to me about how tired I am and how my apnea is. I do not, in fact, have sleep apnea.
Yeah, how would you possibly diagnose that while someone is in a waking state?
What I do have, though, is called sleep wife. And my wife wakes up at the slightest sound, and if I make that sound, she wakes me up to make me stop making the sound. So, in essence, I have like sleep apnea by proxy is what I have. That is part of my problem, but my real problem is I have 3 kids, a job, and I'm doing this podcast from 9 to 11 at night, and I get tired like a human being might. So I thank you very much, sir, and I would mention you, and I'll try to figure out who he is so that we can mention him as part of our listeners of the week, because it was a very well written email, and I very much appreciated the care that obviously went into it. But we do want to thank our listeners of the week. Listeners of the week are people who support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can support the podcast is by going to Wait, did I do the other stuff? I didn't do the other stuff.
No, not the how to get in touch with us stuff. That's okay.
We'll do that afterwards.
First, yeah.
Yeah, if you want, one of the ways you can be a listener of the week is by supporting the podcast financially by going to www.avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. There you can make a PayPal donation. PayPal takes your credit card number, doesn't tell us any of the digits, not even the first one. They might actually tell us the last 4. I'm not really sure about that. I've never looked.
Bunch of stars.
But it's mostly stars. And then they give us most of it, and they keep a little bit for themselves. So we want to thank Shane and probably Chris.
Yeah.
Because Chris, somebody from Australia named Chris, right, said that they were going to donate, and then we got a donation from Australia, but it was with the initials MB, which is in no way Chris.
Yeah.
So if your name is MB, like uppercase M, lowercase b, and your last name starts with a G, then thank you. And then Chris, we haven't seen yours yet. We also want to thank Shane, who's from New Zealand. So everything's from the
Down
other
under.
hemisphere, the down under.
Yeah.
That's right. So thank you, Shane. Thank you. Maybe Chris, maybe MB, maybe both.
Yeah. Shane, thank you for sure. MB, if you're Chris, thank you, Chris. If you're not Chris, then thanks, MB. That's how that goes.
Yeah. And we're taking our thanks back, Chris, if it's not you. We also want to thank our patrons that went to patreon.com/AVRantPodcast. The Patreon, is that right? AVRant Podcast?
Yep.
That's right. Okay. Where you can sign up for a monthly subscription fee, which will, not fee, but a donation that goes to us, some portion of which goes to us. And we have now 54 patrons, because last week we had 51 and we had 53 before that. And I saw a bunch of people donate as soon as they heard that our donation number of people had gone down. So we want to thank our 54 patrons, including Adriana, who let us know that he was, in fact, one of them. So thank you, Adriana, and the 53 others over at Patreon.
For sure. I really like to see that number tick up at patreon.com/AVRantPodcast. So to all 54 of our patrons, thanks so much. Adriano, thank you for being one of them.
All right. We also want to thank, if you can support the podcast any other way, just let us know how you did it, and we will thank you for it. So Chris let Accessories for Less know that we recommended them when he brought his Denon AVR S530 receiver for his sister. We had suggested a $200 Yamaha or more expensive Denon so as to get the very latest video pass-through support and usable audio setup, but he couldn't pass up the low price on the S530, and his features will be sufficient for his sister. I absolutely believe that's true. Mm-hmm. Chris also bought a motor price 9723 subwoofer, 972, I don't know. That's a stupid number. Subwoofer for himself. Although he got it from Amazon, and since that was cheaper than buying directly from Monoprice, I often find that's the case as well.
Yeah, it's the whole shipping thing.
Since,
Amazon has that down, and Monoprice, I guess their warehouse is smaller than Amazon's, which would make sense. But Chris, thank you very much for talking us up to Accessories for Less. Congrats to your sister. And yes, I'm sure the S530 will be just fine. If you want to run a 5.1 speaker setup, it will get the job done at a very, very affordable price.
Dave and his brother Don were inspired by AV Rant and the We Watch Movies to start their own podcast. It's called the Movie Chatter Podcast, and it's their reviews of the latest movies in theaters, on disc, or on streaming services. They're including prominent links to us and the We Watch Movies on their website with some kind words about our shows. So thank you very much. I did see the emails passing around, like whether or not I was going to be allowing that. Listen, if you're not like selling porn, I don't really care. You talk about us all you want. In fact, I just don't tell me what you're selling. Just talk us up. That's fine with me. I got no problems with it. So
yeah, I mean, folks, if you're looking for another podcast to do with movies, Movie Chatter Podcast, check it out. Dave, Don, thanks very much for the shout out and for being inspired by us and by Austin over at We Watch Movies. That's cool.
Do we know that if Dave's podcast is safe for work? Have we listened to it?
I didn't listen all the way through. It sounded at the beginning like it was fine, but who knows? Maybe they dropped some F-bombs. I have no idea.
All right, so at your own risk. Boschko, which sounds like something.
A detective.
Detective, or I was thinking like Johnny Depp might play him in a movie. Boschko let APC and Sewell know that he bought products for them because of us. That helped spark a positive comment from Sewell to us on YouTube. So thank you, Boschko, for that.
Yeah, Boschko, thanks for talking us up. I know he got some products from APC and from Sewell, and it was kind of cool to see Sewell reach out to us on one of our YouTube videos. So that's good. Get us known with more products that we like and retailers that we like.
I'm going to sneeze, I think. I feel like it's coming. This is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. So if you want your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to www.avrant.com, leave us a comment there, facebook.com/avrantpodcast. It's very active on there. youtube.com/c/avrant, where we'll only notice you if you start or end with Sewell, apparently, because everybody else we ignore. So don't leave us a comment there is what I'm trying to say. Ignore YouTube as a way of getting in touch with us. If you want to contact Rob directly, it's rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom @avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. If you only want to know things about when the podcast has been released or something, follow me, because I don't post anything on Twitter anymore. Not for any political reasons. I just kind of stopped. I got too busy. Our producer Austin, we mentioned him already. He has his Twitter's at Austin TEN Austin Pond. He will be answering our questions, or at least monitoring the question list and help putting that together. The question at avrunt.com. Also has his own podcast, We Watch Movies podcast, which, funnily enough, it is not about watching movies. It's about watching plants. It used to be about watching movies, and then
was it?
Saw something about. I don't remember. It was like the life of one of those Planet Earth documentaries or whatever. You know, where they do super slow-mo thing about the plants growing. Stopped watching movies completely on that podcast. Now they watch plants.
All right.
They plant seeds, and then they watch them and then comment on how fast they're growing.
It's still We Watch Movies, though. That's the name.
But they didn't change the name yet. Yeah. They're the glacier. Well, I would say glacial with their change, but really they're more tree-like in their change. They'll get there. It just takes them 100 years to grow tall enough to reach the switch.
Makes sense.
All right. We're going to get into this. We got, let's just skip the news, huh? Is there anything really, there's only like the one news here. What is it?
Yep, just news. Just that the new RBH Impression series, the second generation.
Yeah.
It's
okay,
out now.
We'll talk about that. Okay.
Yeah.
So, anyways, the second generation, it's got 3 models. The R5 bookshelf, which is a 5.25-inch woofer. The R515 center, dual 5.25 woofers, and it can be used vertically. So it's an LCR. So you can either put it horizontally for a center or to the sides, or you buy 3 of them. Call them your mains.
That's right.
And the R55 tower, which is a dual 5.25, 5.25 and mid-range, and 3 6.25 woofers. So it looks like they're going for output again.
Yep.
Prices are at $300 a pair for the bookshelves, $215 each for the centers, and $1,100 a pair for the. So these are quite a bit more expensive than the last round.
I was a little bit disappointed to see those prices, because before it was like $750 a pair for the towers, which made them very affordable, good towers. Now it's crept up to $1,100, which puts them.
Maybe they got some steel in there someplace.
Some hard competition in that price category now.
And that's the standard Phantom black finish. Yeah. There's also a gloss black option that costs a bit more. There's been a surprise. Also, elite upgraded versions with aluminum drivers and different crossovers. RBH says the elite versions bridge the gap between the Impression Series and the SV Signature Series, meaning they're basically like the new MC Series from RBH's old lineup. $480 a pair for the bookshelves, $350 each for the centers, and $1,750 a pair for the towers.
The elite
again, the
towers,
gloss is the gloss black is available as an upgrade.
Yeah, so if you went for the elite towers in the gloss black, you're pushing $2,000 a pair at that point.
I kind of like this. I'll be honest with you. I kind of like this center channel idea here.
Yeah.
I'm kind of for that.
Yeah, and it's got the offset tweeter, so when you lay it horizontally, the tweeter will be raised a little bit from the center line created by the 3 drivers.
You usually put that one on the inside if you're gonna the tweeter on the inside if you're gonna use them as LCRs. So or left and rights at least. I kind of like that. $350. So you're looking at what, less than $1,000 for your front pair, right? Or about $1,000 for your front pair. So
if you went
50 LCR.
If you
for your front 3, front 3,
yeah.
front 3.
Well, that would be the elite version if they're $350 each.
Yeah, I like them. I like that. I think.
I mean, the M Series used to be great. So
yeah, I mean, I don't really see. I mean, I always liked the towers before, but I kind of like the towers because they were like so cheap that now like a stand doesn't even make sense.
Yeah,
with the bookshelf, and they had such output. But most people didn't need that output at that price point, anyways. So I'm kind of liking this. Okay, that's the center one at least. $1,750 is a bit pricey though. I don't know.
Well, that's for the elite versions. You don't have to do that.
I understand.
It's not the entry level anymore.
All right, let's get into the questions. And we're going to hopefully get through the questions from last week, but we will see. Mark is the fellow with the bedroom addition on his house that was done on the cheap with the poorly installed door between the bedroom and the den. That was the one where the door closed and there was a step.
That's correct. Yep.
It closed on the step. Anyways, he thanks us for our discussion. Agrees that he should replace the whole wood frame. Good. We're all on the same page there. Blah, blah, blah. We mentioned that you should get a solid core door. Does thickness matter? What about any sort of design that is routed into the door surface? Would it be best the door to be a flat slab rather than having some parts of the door with thicker and some parts that are thinner due to the pattern of this? No, I don't care about that. That's not going to make any difference. I mean, you're getting done. Don't worry about that.
I mean, they do have what are the doors? There's like the standard 1 3/8 inch and then 1 5/6 or something like that.
I don't know
some that are slightly thicker than others.
Yeah.
Honestly, so he told us previously about the construction of his wall.
Right.
And his wall was like, he's like, it's hollow, doesn't seem to have insulation in there. One used to be an exterior wall, and they didn't even take down the stucco. They just put 2x4s right on top of the stucco and then a single layer of drywall, and that was it. But the wall doesn't seem to be the weakest point of the soundproofing. It seems to be his door. But honestly, it's the seal around your door. That's the weak area. The door itself, granted, yeah, some sound will leak through there. But if you basically get any standard solid core weather stripped door, that's going to prevent the airflow once you have a proper door jamb, a proper like frame around the door installed, and then a solid core door with weather stripping. The thickness is not going to make a significant difference at that point, nor would any sort of pattern that's, routed into the door at all.
I would highly recommend getting some sort of pattern, because a absolutely flat door looks
flat
weird.
Slab does look
looks a little odd.
Yeah, something similar to what he has right now, your standard interior door that has a little square pattern in it.
He's heard of people beefing up their doors by using a layer of MDF and green glue added to the door. Should he consider that, or would it be overkill? I think people who do that are ridiculous, to be honest with you. Well, it's not okay. If you were to do an actual test, did that make a difference? The answer would be yes. But the fact that there's an air gap all the way around your door, that's unless it's blocking all the air coming in and out. I mean, we're talking about this like, okay, you should. I don't want you to hear from this discussion, you need to block all the air around your door, because it could very well be that the air around that space around your door is the air return for your room.
Well, he gets into that a little bit later too.
Right. So if you do end up like weather stripping everything and getting it nice and sealed and everything else, you have to have a way for air to get out of this room, or you're just going to stifle in there. It's going to be very, very uncomfortable and maybe deadly at some point.
As far as beefing up the door, I mean, it's only going to make sense if you're also beefing up the wall.
Right.
If you're not going to do anything to the wall, there's no point doing anything extra to the door. Right now, we're trying to bring the door up to parity with your wall. If you're then going to beef up the door beyond what the wall does, well, now the wall becomes the weakest link in the chain. So unless you're going to do both, if you're going to double up on your wall with green glue and another layer of drywall as well, okay, maybe you could consider on the door. But again, it's going to be the air movement around the door more than going like penetrating through the actual material of the door itself. So yeah, I would say that's a bit of unnecessary overkill in this instance.
So we mentioned a couple of times that he might want to take down some drywall and add insulation, and doing so would make a big difference. He was under the impression that insulation doesn't really block a ton of sound. So could we please clarify? Yeah, you were under the completely wrong impression. Like, where you got that impression?
Well, I wasn't entirely going to say that.
Well, I mean, insulation is what block. That's what every one of these absorptive panels are just a insulation thing that also tends to block sound. So does any sort of insulation block? I mean, any sort of mass does. Any sort of mass does.
Yeah, it was mostly, though, because the reason I was saying it would make sense to take down his drywall and add insulation is because he described in his email to us that if he taps on the walls, they reverberate like crazy. Like they're like thunk, 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 like a drum. I was like, insulation will deaden that.
For sure.
So it's not so much that, sound like penetrating through it. It is only going to knock down sound penetration like 3-4 dB. But it will kill the reverberation, and the reverberation can make any sound that does penetrate the drywall. It amplifies it, essentially, just like the body of a drum or the body of a hollow, acoustic guitar. You've got this empty reverberant space behind there, so any sound that does get into the bay of the wall now essentially gets amplified because it's ringing around in there. So that's what the insulation will knock down. That's what will make a significant difference. His description of knocking on it and it sounding like a drum, that's what made me say, yeah, you probably want to get some insulation in there.
I mean, you've actually, I know you've seen this before. If you've been alive and paid any attention when somebody was beating on drums, you absolutely have seen this before. With bass drums, if it's a little too ringy, they throw in a pillow inside there, and it just
like
helps
in a kick drum in a drum
set.
set.
Kick drum. It on the floor drum there. It just helps. It helps deaden it a little bit.
Yep.
So this is the same sort of thing. This is the exact same sort of thing. We're just any sound that gets in there is going to get its energy is going to be absorbed by the insulation that's there, and it's going to reduce that ringing. All of the heating and cooling in this house is done via split system ductless units. No forced air or air ducts. So no need for air return, right? I actually don't know the answer to that question, so I'm going to say yes, No, maybe it seems like you still need air.
So you don't need a traditional air return that gets air back to your furnace because you don't have a furnace.
Right.
But you need ventilation. You can't
seal up this room.
You can't just seal off a room and have no way for air to circulate. Now, whatever air circulates in and out of this room is being heated and cooled by a separate non-forced air ductless system. That's fine. The heating and cooling, right, you don't need an air return for that. But whatever your ventilation system is, and I have no idea what it is, because just looking at the plans, it looks like they just threw down a slab, added some walls to the exterior surface, and called it a day. Now, I think there's a window in here, so that's probably your ventilation system, is whatever window is in there. Being a bedroom, it would require a window to be within fire code. You have to have an egress window to call it a bedroom. So I imagine the window is your ventilation system, which is fine, but could get stuffy in there. Could get darn stuffy in there.
So, I mean, then it goes right back to what I was saying. You can't just weather strip your entire door and say, woohoo, I blocked all the sound. Yeah, you've also blocked all the air that was, because, I mean, even if...
Although the way it was now, I don't see... I mean, I guess there's some gap around the door, but like, they had this step down and the door lowered so that it's basically, going up against the step that leads into the
but there could have
den.
been a gap. Given the construction we were seeing, I bet there's an inch gap down.
Well, I really don't think they even thought about air circulation in that this was a slapdash job that was done.
Right. So I mean, it's just something. My air return, my air is underneath my door.
Sure.
And yes, when they're cranking it in here, and we're 15 feet away in the open room on the other side, you can hear the bass and sometimes some of the treble and stuff like that. Is it distracting? Not really. It can be, but if you're trying to have a quiet conversation, yes, it'll be too much. But if you're 2 or 3 people talking in a room, you're not even going to really notice it all that much. You'll notice it when the subwoofers hit, and that's about it.
But if you do want to seal up this door that goes between your bedroom and den, which is essentially the only entrance from this bedroom into the house, if you do want to do that, you could, because this master bedroom has exposure to the exterior. So if ventilation wasn't built properly when this was constructed, it wouldn't be the worst thing to have somebody come in, an HVAC specialist. You can say, I don't have to worry about the heating and the air conditioning part of it, but I do need to worry about the ventilation part of it. And if they say, well, you do need some additional ventilation in this room if you're going to completely seal that door, you have options. Since you have exterior access, you could vent out through the attic space and have an air inlet that comes into the closet and put a louvered door on the closet, and there's your ventilation. Like, it could be something like that. So it's not as though you're out of options. It's just, it should be within your mind that you got to ventilate air in here somehow. The air must circulate somehow.
Right. Daniel has a pair of KEF LS50 speakers for his 2.1 setup. He was trying to incorporate a mini DSP 2x4, but he somehow blew the tweeters. The speakers are out of warranty, so he's looking into repair costs, but this also has him considering trying a new pair of speakers. But if you get something new, he'd want them to sound noticeably different than his KEFs. He's already auditioned SVS and Aperion in the past, and while he thought they sounded good, he ultimately liked the KEF speakers a little bit better. So should he try the Ascend Sierra-2s? He didn't try them before, only because of shipping costs. Well, I mean, it's a completely different tweeter, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's a completely different thing. I don't want you... the answer to your question is yes, you should try them. But before you do, I think you should do other stuff that is free first. I mean,
the shipping cost isn't tremendous because at least they are the bookshelf speakers.
Right.
So you're not going to be out, hundreds of dollars in shipping or something. You'll be out, dozens of dollars in shipping.
Yeah, I mean, if it were me, I would go to local high-end shops. Sure. The places where they're going to try to sell you $50,000 speakers, and I would listen to $50,000 speakers. Get an idea of what sounds significantly different, so that you have an idea in your mind of what you're listening for as far as not so much which we're listening for, but what options might be out there. And then when
I was thinking those brand new Revel Performa Beryllium speakers.
Yeah.
Like they just came out, and they might, I don't actually know the price on them yet, but they might be around there because these are $1,500 a pair of speakers. They're not inexpensive, and the LS50s are really good speakers.
Right.
The Sierra-2s from Ascend, they frequently get compared with the LS50s because they're right in the same price range and they're sort of similar sizes. And honestly, out of all the people who've I've conversed with about that exact comparison, it's been about 50-50. About half of the people have preferred the KEFs, about half of the people have preferred the Ascends. And it's funny because, you know, like one fellow, as soon as he already had the KEFs, as soon as he got the Sierra-2s, he's like, these are the ones for me. I prefer these clearly. And another fellow who's put up videos on YouTube, he's like, it took me a while, but ultimately I decided on the KEFs, you know. And I'm like, and I don't have a beef either way. It completely makes sense. Different rooms, different setups, different distances. I was
going to say the room can make that, and that's just where it really comes down to is in your room. It could very well be that one speaker is the superior speaker to the other, whereas in anechoic conditions, they might not be that different. But because of how they interact with your room, it could make a significant difference one or the other. And we cannot predict that. Yeah. So I would definitely go listen to other speakers in stores first. See if they'll let you take some home. You know, give them a deposit or whatever.
Yeah, you could try like the GoldenEars. You could try if they have Focal. That'd be a great option. Yeah, I mean, like literally anything.
Anything.
Yeah.
Anything expensive in the same sort of price range, I would say, would be something to do. But then also consider, but I would do the appearance sort of last. And the reason I say that is because the Ascend, is because they it's going to cost money, and I want you at that point to be ready to purchase.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be, I don't want it to be, I tried these other things a while back and I didn't really like them. Now I'm going to try this because you then wouldn't have exposed yourself to the rest of the stuff. Expose yourself to the rest of the stuff first. Come back to this at the end and say, okay, now that I know sort of, I have some more experience. I know I'm more ready to buy. I'm more sure of my purchasing decision. And now let me listen to these and see what I think. So that's sort of how I'm coming to this. So he has a pair of STAX L700 electrostatic headphones, but the left and right channels are imbalanced and getting worse. Being electrostatic, they need a special headphone amplifier. The STAX amp that he owns does have separate left-right balance controls, but the imbalance between the two channels is not linear. If he changes the master volume, he needs to readjust the channel balance every time. They don't seem to be any service centers, and again, they're out of warranty now, so any ideas?
This one was like literally my only idea was get in touch with STAX
or call David JansZen maybe and see if he's got any ideas, because I mean the man's dad invented electrostatic speakers, so he's been working with those.
Does
for
he
a long
do headphones
time.
though?
He doesn't, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying get in touch with him and say, I've got these headphones. This is the problem I'm having. Is there a way for me to get these fixed, or do you know somebody who would work on these? Because he's super nice dude, and he would.
Okay.
I mean, at least the worst thing is he's gonna not respond to your email.
Yeah.
You wasted 20 minutes of your time, making sure that you used your and your right, there and theirs. So it's and it's. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, with something like this, the only idea I had was to get directly in touch with the manufacturer. There is nothing I would have in the way of advice of something to try yourself. There's no alternative like replacement thing that I could point you to, because the amplifier and the headphones need to go hand in hand when they're electrostatics like this.
So I can't be the amp, nothing. Right? I mean, it can't be the amp. It's got to be something in the speakers, I would think. I mean, the headphones, I would think, but
but they're almost inseparable. So
yeah,
it's very tough to tell. It's very tough to tell.
Alvin has noticed that when the TV show or movie first start playing, the front display of his AV receiver will flash some sort of message about a volume level offset with a -3 dB or -7 dB or some other number attached to it. What is that about? I wish you told us which receiver he had, because I'm trying to think if that's ever happened.
Well,
to me.
it's pretty much any Dolby Digital or Dolby True HD decoding receiver, which is more or less all of them if they're surround sound. What you're talking about there, Alvin, is the Dialogue Normalization. Which is a Dolby thing. In essence, it was their attempt to... So the reason they call it dialogue normalization is their hope was when HD TV came out, the idea was that everything was going to be broadcast in Dolby Digital, including the commercials. And the idea was that the dialogue was supposed to be normalized, meaning that people's voices were supposed to remain at a pretty consistent volume at all times, whether it was the TV show or the commercial or whatever. That's what dialogue normalization aimed to do. In practice, it isn't very effective because the advertisers still wanted their ads to be louder. Even when the laws came in and said they can't be louder, they're still like, well, here's the threshold we're allowed, so everything is that volume with no dynamic range at all, which makes it seem louder.
Right.
They're still trying to get around that. So that's what dialogue normalization was attempting to do. In practice, it unfortunately hasn't been all that effective, but that's what it's there for.
So he says there are a billion different listening modes and codecs. Oh, he's got a Yamaha. How do you know for certain that you're using the best one? Are there limitations based on that particular device or streaming service? Okay, most of the listening modes, I mean, there's lots of different codecs that are out there, but most of the listening modes are BS modes made up by somebody down at the labs who decided that a rock arena sounds very reverberant, so there should be lots of reverb in there.
Or jazz club or arena or any of those.
Any of that stuff. If you see any of that stuff pop up, then the answer is you've gone to the dark side. You shouldn't be using that at all. So what is the best? For certain, you're using the best one. Well, whatever's the most direct decoding of whatever it is usually what I would consider to be the best one. Now, your receiver should default to that unless you've got this Rock Arena garbage on it or something like that. It should be DTS:X or Dolby True HD or Dolby Atmos or whatever with the surrounding. Now, your options there are some options within it. And a lot of times the options are cinema or maybe movies, music, and game.
Right.
Those are
cinema mode.
The three.
Movie mode, so like movie mode, music mode, and game mode, yeah.
Rob and I have discussed this a number of times on the podcast, and I think, to my ears, the differences are pretty negligible, but I think that objectively the game mode is the one that does the least amount of anything to the signal. Which is
unintuitive. You wouldn't necessarily expect the game mode to be the best one, but it often is because game mode attempts to keep the sounds in each speaker, in each channel, discrete. The music mode tends to kind of smear everything across the front speakers. The movie mode is usually okay, but sometimes it adds even a little bit of reverb to the surround channels.
Right.
So the game mode tends to be the most discrete and the most faithful to the original signal, even though it is altering it. So there's kind of two sides to what I think is the best listening mode, because there is just playing the thing as the thing. If it's Dolby Digital 5.1, you can just play it as Dolby Digital 5.1. And actually, that's one area where I really like how Yamaha handles the automatic listening modes, because they have their mode that's just called straight. And straight says, if you feed me 2-channel PCM, I will play back in stereo, and you will only hear sounds out of your front, left, and right speakers and your subwoofer. If you feed me Dolby Digital 5.1, I'll use 5.1 speakers. If you feed me Dolby True HD 7.1, I'll use 7.1 speakers. If you feed me Atmos, I'll use all 11 speakers.
Right.
But that's just the straight decode. Maybe you have 11 speakers set up, and you're saying, I want to always use all 11 of my speakers, even if it's the signal coming in as 2-channel or 5.1 or 7.1. I still want to make use of all 11 of my speakers. That is your upmixing. And your upmixing is where the whole game mode comes in versus movie mode or music mode. That'll be in some sort of upmixing mode. You'll have usually those 3 options, and we prefer to use game most of the time. Now, of course, if you're using the Dolby Surround upmixer or the DTS-X upmixer, similar thing there. That's getting you all the way up to all 11 of your speakers. And if there is the option for movie, music, and game, try game. That's probably going to be the one we like best. So that's upmixing versus just playing it back straight. But other than those two things, I wouldn't use any of the other nonsense.
I know, it's all garbage. That being said, if you try movie or theater or cinema or whatever that is, or music or whatever, and you like that one better, don't come convince us that you're right, because we're okay. Yeah, we're fine with that. We don't care one way or the other. It's fine. I've listened to cinema, I've listened to music, I've tried all three of them, and I've been like, they all kind of sound the same. I mean, they're pretty good. They're all pretty much the same. So he lastly asks, is Dolby Pro Logic 2Z considered a 5.1.2 setup since it can add front heights? Is there a difference between that and Atmos? And the answer is yes, it is not the same thing. 5.1.2 is a 7-channel setup with front heights from Dolby Pro Logic 2Z is deriving the heights from the information in the front left and right channels. Whereas a 5.1.2 Atmos setup, the metadata within is dictating what is in. There is actually something programmed to be put up there. Not necessarily in those exact channels, but they're going to try to define those objects that are in that three-dimensional space. So I would not say that they are the same thing. And I would not even call it that. I would call it 5.1 with
front heights.
With front heights or something like that.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky because we are using this new nomenclature now, these three figures separated by two dots. And sometimes we're using that to describe the signal, and sometimes we're using it to describe the speaker configuration that you have. So you might see some people using it as a shorthand, but really they shouldn't. You should really only see the three numbers separated by two dots when it is an immersive audio system, Atmos, DTS-X. And honestly, even Oro 3D doesn't use that nomenclature. So it's Atmos or DTS-X. That's where you'll have something like 5.1.2 or 7.1.4. That's where you're going to see that is Atmos or DTS-X. Dolby Pro Logic 2Z is not the same thing. It is an up mixer, but it's matrixing the sound. There's no object-based audio. There is no height layer. It's just matrixing that sound. It's making its best guess. And so, I would call that a 5.1 setup plus front heights. I would not call it 5.1.2, just to keep the two things separate. If you say it's 5.1.2, I'm going to assume you have actual Atmos.
Yeah. Though the difference between 5.1.2 and 5.1 with front heights is the receiver, not the speakers. So once you got the receiver,
to decode it. Once you upgrade the receiver, you could use the exact same speaker configuration, but now that it actually has Atmos, now you can call it 5.1.2.
I mean, you could call it Shirley or whatever. I don't care what you call it, but if you want to be accurate, that's accurate.
Yeah, it'll confuse things.
Michael, it's funny that we're saying you could confuse things by using the nomenclature that is itself already confusing.
Yes.
But let's go on. Michael's helping a friend set up her new living room. The house is not that large overall, but it's open concept. She has no interest in pressurizing the whole house, but she does want a subwoofer. She's given him a $1,200 budget to put together a 5.1 speaker system, and that needs to cover the speaker, sub, and receiver. TVs are already mounted, and wires, cables, and accessories are separate. Okay, the TV is where the photos show in the picture of the house here, and she has her seats about 8 feet from the TV, so what we recommend. All right, wood floors, big open space that includes the sitting room, the kitchen, the dining room, the whole 9 yards.
Yep.
I am still looking for the TV. Where's the TV in this setup?
Well, it's not in this because these were the images from like the realtor thing. It's the image of a horse there. She has mounted the TV there and is sitting about 8 feet away. So instead of a dining room right next to the kitchen, that's sort of become her TV area.
Okay, and then behind that would be like a bar, a bar thing, and then behind that, on the other side of the bar thing, would be the kitchen.
That's right.
Essentially. Okay, so 8 feet away from that. What does she want? 5.1
setup, and so we basically need to get an AV receiver, 5 speakers, and a subwoofer for $1,200. Yeah. So I'm really hoping, because I already responded to this via email. I'm really hoping he already got the subwoofer, because the SVS SB12-NSD. Because I'm guessing she doesn't want a gigantic ported sub.
One would think.
That's just a guess, but I think it's a pretty safe bet. $400 for the SVS SB12-NSD, which you could still do about a week and a couple days ago, but not anymore. So I'm really hoping he jumped on that, because for
So that's
$400
down the drain.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the size of this space. You want a sub that isn't going to bottom out, and for $400 you can't do better than that. Now the price has gone up to $500, and that would hurt even more of the budget. So I'm really hoping you jumped on that. If
so
you
we need wires and everything, right? Accessories and all that.
That's all separate. He doesn't need wires and all that. This is just the speakers, sub, and AV receiver.
Oh, so just for the speakers. All right. Okay, go.
Yeah.
You were talking.
So
I'm sorry, I interrupted.
the system I put together for this budget, over at Accessories for Less, I said get that Yamaha RX-V383, $200, 5.1
You're just going to say the Focal Birds, aren't you? Is all you're going to say.
I am. Well, I'm going to say the Focal Super Birds, because right now you can get the Super Birds for $300 for a pair, because normally they're $300 each at Accessories for Less, but it's buy one, get one free right now for the Super Birds. So get a pair of those, because I think a wall mount in here makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
you
left
wall
to right.
mount a pair of Super Birds to the left and the right of the TV, and that's going to be terrific. Now, for the center, it's a little bit weird, because would you really get another pair of Super Birds at $300 and do that? I was like, no, let's spend $150 and just get a Focal Bird. And that can be wall mounted right below the TV or above the TV, or if she's got a TV stand holding equipment below the TV, it'll just sit on there really nicely. And a Focal Bird would make an excellent center speaker. Then a pair of Little Birds for the surrounds makes perfect sense. So
on stands, you mean? Or
on stands, or you could wall mount them in here, whatever you need to do. You can even ceiling mount them.
Sure.
So Super Bird left and rights, Bird center, Little Bird surrounds, an SVS SB12-NSD that I really hope you already picked up for $400, and a Yamaha RX-V383 brought the total price to $1,250. So if you really, really needed to hit $1,200 only and you couldn't spend the extra $50, you could take the Bird center and downgrade that to a Little Bird as your center, and voila, you've hit $1,200 exactly.
Why not skip the Little Bird completely, or the center channel? Why not skip it?
And just have a Phantom?
Just have a Phantom.
I'd like to have a center in here. Who knows? People might be sitting off to the sides.
Yeah, I have a feeling she's not going to care.
That's
I gotta be honest with you. I gotta be honest with you. I have a feeling she's not gonna notice one bit of difference. I've sat off to the side of a Phantom center before, with the speakers. Kind of, if you make sure they're a little bit further apart, then right smack dab to the side of the TV, just cheat them out a little bit. Mm-hmm. I would also consider looking at in-wall options here too, depending on what she can do. So
maybe.
We've mentioned a couple of those around here before. There's Aperion has some. I'm not sure what the price is on.
Aperion has some. Yeah, they go for about $300 a pair, so they're right in that same price range.
They're that same. I would consider taking a look at that, because you might be able to stretch that budget.
Yeah,
you say, I'm gonna put them in the wall, and they're going to be pretty, and you'll be able to not even be able to see them. Then she might be like, oh yeah, okay, that'd be good. Then you could get two pairs. You get your fronts and then your sides, and then you're done, kind of thing. I think if this is representative of what her space looks like, I think in walls would be a better option. Though the Focal Birds are kind of industrial looking, anyways. So
yeah, they're really nice. And they blend in when they're wall mounted. So yeah, I mean the other option would be what, NHT Super Zeros for this price range.
Sure. I mean that's an easy recommendation too. Those are even smaller than the Birds, so I mean she might like those as well. So give her the options. I mean they're all sort of kind of in the same price range. A pair of I think the NHTs are like 120 a pop, 125 a pop. So
125 a pop, so 250 for a pair. Yep.
Yeah, and you could do those all the way around. 4 or 5 of those. And,
I mean the NHT Super Zeros are the closest to being a regular black box speaker. And then the Focal Super Birds and Little Birds are, a little bit more on-wall design with the pivoting mounts, and then the Aperions would be in-walls. So there's three good options.
If she decides that she likes the in-walls, before you guys do anything, like purchasing anything, figure out where the studs are.
Yes, that would be a very good idea.
Figure out where the studs are, because you may say, okay, this one's speaker's going to be here, and this speaker's going to be here. You're like, they're not exactly even, because I never do that. I'm always like, oh yeah, I'll put one there, one there, and then there's like a stud right in the middle of the thing. Figure out where the studs are. Just take yourself a second.
Yeah.
And if it's an exterior wall too, consider that as well. I mean, if it's like I couldn't do in walls in here. I think that exterior, 2 of the walls are cinder. 3 of the walls are cinder block walls. That'd be a little rough.
Yup.
Mike, this comes from Facebook. Mike has an Eclipse RW12 subwoofer, 12-inch, ported 340 watts. It claims a negative 3 dB down to 21 hertz. Maybe. And he's thinking he might like to upgrade it. He has about $1,000 he could spend. When it comes to subwoofers, is it as simple as bigger is better, or is it all dependent on this particular room size, configuration, and placement, and the volume level he uses, etc.? It's funny. I don't think volume level has really much to do with it. People are always concerned about that. But to me, like I like a lot of bass. Well, okay. Well, if you like a lot of bass and you live in a closet, you don't need a very big subwoofer.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't make any difference, how much bass you like or how loud you like to listen to it for the size of your subwoofer. It's really your room. Because once you get the subwoofer that's appropriate for your room size, then it will play as loud or as soft as you want it to play, usually, within reason, I suppose. So we've talked about this a number of times. In fact, in the last couple of podcasts, I think we've said it at least on both podcasts. You can have loud, or is it low, cheap, or small. Pick two.
Yeah.
So you can't have low and small and also have it cheap.
Yeah.
You can't have it cheap and low and have it small. It's going to be expensive. So it is technically, I guess, at the same price point, bigger is better, or at least bigger is lower.
Yeah, bigger is more efficient, I guess you could say. Yeah.
It's just physics. Trying to get a lot of output and a lot of sound, a lot of low bass out of a very small box requires a huge amplifier and some really good design and a lot of bracing. All of that costs money. So it makes it expensive, which is why if you want something really small that plays really loud and is really impressive, you go to JL Audio and you drop them $10,000 because that's what it's going to cost.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got the floor space and you don't, and your budget's a little tighter, you go to Power Sound Audio and you put a refrigerator-sized box in your corner and it blows the doors off the place.
Yep.
But
or HSU, similar thing. Gigantic box, big, huge ports, but a nice, affordable price.
And then I think SVS kind of is the only sort of outlier in all this, in that you get low bass, you get an inexpensive price, and you get a reasonable size box. It's still big.
Mean, it's still big, and the price is higher than Power Sound or HSU, so you've traded a little bit. You've traded a little bit of more money for a slightly smaller sound without giving up performance, right?
Right.
But again, you had to pick two. You had to offset one with the other. You had to pay a little bit more to get a little bit smaller without giving up the extension.
So what you need to know is the size of your room.
Yes.
And that's pretty much it, to be honest with you.
And whether you care about more than one seat within that room.
That's true.
Yeah. Because if you have a small room and you only care about one seat, I don't know how much you're going to, you could upgrade from this Klipsch, but if you have a small enclosed room and you only care about one seat, maybe you just want it that much louder. And we can do that. Go get yourself a vented Power Sound Audio for $1,000. It will be louder than your Klipsch. I guarantee it. All right? Yeah. But if that's all you want. This is a question
I like to ask people. The two questions I want to know from people are their budget and how low they want to go. I mean, I do want to know the size of their room and all that.
Oh yeah,
but
very important. Yeah.
It's their, like, I'm standing in the room. I'm like, okay, how much money do you have to spend, and how low do you want this subwoofer to hit? Because if they're like, I don't care, I just want it to play.
Sometimes
play loud.
People also say, I want to hit single digits, and it's like, but why?
Well, I mean, and yes, I mean that's a conversation you can have with them, but at least you know where they are, or their starting point.
Sure,
if their starting point is, I want to hit 1 hertz, I'm like, okay, well, you're stupid to start with, because there is no 1 hertz in anything. I mean, it goes once a second. Yeah. Why would anything want to go once a second? Like, what sound
even
do you think you're possibly hearing?
Even a helicopter blade won't be doing that. That's faster than that. Yeah.
So. Fine. I know that you want sub 20 bass is all I really want to know. Yeah. Do you want sub 20 or do you not care? Because if you don't care, then that price point changes considerably. You can suddenly get a lot louder of a sub, or maybe cheaper of a sub, because you're not looking for that super low bass. If you're looking for that super low bass, then suddenly we're in a completely different discussion.
But the other really important side of this is, like, we don't know a lot about Mike's setup.
We know nothing so far,
and maybe,
that I can tell.
maybe he's like, I've got this clip sub, I'm sitting in my seat in my theater, and every time the kick drum goes off, I don't feel it in my chest like I'm expecting it. This is purely hypothetical, but maybe it's that. And he's going, so I want to spend $1,000 and upgrade my sub. Well, let's say that it's entirely possible if that were the scenario. He goes and spends $1,000, gets a Power Sound Audio 15V, which out and out plays louder and lower than the clip she already has, but he puts it in the same spot as where he has his clips right now, and he still doesn't get any tactile sensation when the kick drum goes off because he's sitting in a null.
Right.
That might be the case. So it's really important to know about your room, how many seats you care about, where you're able to position the sub, because the sub and the room are inseparable.
Right.
The bass wavelengths are so long that you are never really hearing only direct sound from a subwoofer. You're only ever hearing reflected sound. So it's as if you are inside the cabinet of the speaker. You can't separate the room from the sub. So we have to know, so is it just bigger is better? Not necessarily. You could get the craziest, loudest sub of all, but if you're still sitting in a null for where the kick drum is hitting, you're still sitting in a null, and nothing got better, no matter how much you spend, no matter how big and bad you went. So the room and the configuration and the placement are hugely important.
To explain that to those that don't remember what a null is, basically, as the sound waves are bouncing around the room, as where you're sitting, the bass wave coming off of one wall is hitting in exactly the opposite, part of the wave. It doesn't actually, the compression part of the wave doesn't actually go up and down, but whatever. So you can think about the up is hitting your ear at the exact same time off of a one wall. On a separate wall, the down part of the wave is hitting your ear, which means they're basically canceling each other out.
That's right.
So no matter how loud you make that, it's going to cancel itself out when it gets to you, no matter what you do. Now, if you move over a seat,
it might be totally different.
Suddenly you're like, my teeth hurt.
Yeah.
I feel nauseated. What is going on here? That is why. Maybe now you're sitting in the peak where both ups are hitting at the exact same moment,
right, yeah.
and it's adding to it. You're like, the brown note. Yeah, so that's there's a lot to discuss here, but from your question, can we get you a sub for $1,000 that plays better than that sub? No problem. But I don't know if you want to buy it, and I don't even know if it'll help you. So come back to us with more information, and we'll help you out there, buddy. Brandon. A few weeks back, Brandon asked if he should send money that he really wanted to for an LG OLED TV, or should he save a whole bunch of money and get a Vizio? We ultimately said he should probably go for the Vizio, so he did. The picture looked great, but unfortunately his user did suffer from, his unit did suffer from some infrequent but still annoying horizontal white lines occasionally flashing across the screen. On top of this, its Wi-Fi was horrible. And he had issues getting HDMI ARC to work when his previous Samsung TV's ARC worked perfectly. So he's returned the Vizio to Costco. So what should he replace it with? He's back to considering the LG OLED TV, especially a refurbished unit to keep the price a bit lower, or he could go for a Sony, probably the X930E. Can the Sony send Atmos from streaming services via ARC?
Not right now.
I think I'm be honest with you, dude. At this point, I just want you to get the OLED. I'll be honest with you. At this point, I'm just like, there's no way. I mean, if it were me, I'd get another Vizio.
Right.
I would just be like, everybody gets a bum unit every once in a while. It's no big deal. I'll get the next one. I'll be fine. And if I had to get 3 bum units in a row, you know what I'm going to do? I'm getting a 4th one. I would. I'm just too cheap.
Well, especially from Costco, where they're crazy good about that type of
exchange. Yeah. But I understand where you're coming from.
Yes, and absolutely.
At this point, I'd be like, just get the OLED. I think you're going to be happy in the long run. I think in the end, you're going to have less buyer's remorse. So let's just go with the OLED TV and just call it a day. That's what I say.
To answer the Atmos over ARC, I mean, particularly from Netflix, where they maintain their list of which devices support Atmos output. The only TVs that do it right now are the 2017 and the brand new 2018 LG OLED TVs. So as far as that goes, the Sonys aren't doing it.
So he'll be using this TV quite a bit every day. So he's still a bit hesitant about getting an OLED TV, I guess, because of burn-in?
Yeah, he's worried about the burn-in.
But he's still like all the bells and whistles, Dolby Vision, Atmos, etc. What's the way to go here? Change the channel occasionally so that you don't have the same thing in the same point.
And we'll get into this a bit more, but also if you're really worried about burn-in, which unfortunately that whole and largely Samsung is behind that because they don't make OLEDs, and they're like, yeah let's just like LCD managed to kill plasma with all the worries of it. They're like, let's trot that thing out again. But if you keep the OLED light setting, which is the equivalent of like backlight for LCD TVs,
right.
In the LG OLED, there's a setting called OLED light. If you keep that set at 30 or lower, it's nigh impossible to burn in the TV. That basically caps the brightness of an all-white screen at 150 nits, and it just doesn't happen. So if you're willing to cap the brightness. Yeah.
Or just change the channel.
That helps too.
Don't watch CNN all day long.
That's right.
He's read about a couple of nitpicky issues with LG's 2017 OLEDs, including occasional color banding and some motion artifacts, particularly when upscaled sources. Has Rob noticed these issues? Mm-hmm. And if he's planning on watching the TV during the day, will the brighter Sony be a better choice regardless? I don't know, Rob. Have you noticed any issues?
So there's some interesting things here because these are some of the settings that you can do in the LG OLEDs to help with these issues, and they're not super intuitive. So normally,
why would they be?
Normally, I'm against any type of processing. Normally, I don't want dynamic contrast. I don't want edge enhancement. I don't want motion compensation. I certainly don't want, soap opera effect stuff in there.
Sure.
But there's some settings that help out here. So first of all, on the whole color banding side of things, now, a lot of people are judging that based off of streaming services, and it's kind of just inherent to the content, which it's not the TV's fault. Right? If the color banding is in the content, what is the TV supposed to do about that? It's actually showing it accurately instead of masking it like some TVs do. So if you're watching an actual Blu-ray or Ultra HD Blu-ray, I've never seen any banding in that. I have spotted occasional banding off of Netflix, but that's Netflix's problem. Not the
I was going to say that happens to me all the time on Netflix. Yeah. Whenever there's like any sort of, there's always like a bloom that comes when the initial
like the
title
Columbia,
comes up on
like
the black,
the
black screen, and then the words come up, and there's like this color band,
especially when it's at the very beginning of the movie and it hasn't like fully buffered up to the highest bit rate yet. But honestly, if you turn on the dynamic contrast setting to low, it's darned effective. And normally I wouldn't do that, but for HDR10, you absolutely want to set dynamic contrast to low because that's actually the setting that activates their active HDR, which analyzes the HDR10 signal and tone maps it frame by frame instead of just setting it once via the metadata. So you totally want to do it for HDR10. For Dolby Vision, you do not want to do it because that already has dynamic metadata built into it. So do not have dynamic contrast turned on for Dolby Vision content, but for HDR10, and I will say even for SDR, particularly since he said he wants to watch during the day, it helps to boost the deep shadow details a little bit, and it does a darn good job of smoothing out the color banding. So I'm in favor of dynamic contrast on low for everything other than Dolby Vision. Now for the motion artifacts, normally LG's is called True Motion. Normally I would turn that off. However, if you set it to user, it gives you two sliders, de-judder and de-blur. If you set both of those sliders to 0, you get no soap opera effect, but it turns on the 120 hertz mode. And
so you get the black screens between.
It doesn't actually do the black frame insertion on the 2017s. It does on the 2018s, but not on the 2017. You don't get the black frame insertion, but what you get is 5 identical frames. So you get 120 hertz. 5 identical frames, no soap opera effect, but it really gets rid of any motion artifacts. So do turn on True Motion, but just set both of the sliders to 0. Go to the user mode, set it to 0. The last one is the edge enhancement, which I don't know what the heck they did, but you can confirm this for yourself with edge enhancement test patterns. On is the correct setting. On turns edge enhancement off. Off turns edge enhancement on. They literally just flip the names. And a clue to this is the new Technicolor Expert mode, which pretty much gets all the settings like bang on. It had edge enhancement turned on, and that made me double check it. I'm like, it's actually right. On is actually off. Off is actually on. I have no idea why that happened.
Crazy.
So some very unintuitive settings, but it clears up most of these things. Now, is the X930E just a better choice in the sunlight than an OLED? In some regards, yes. If you've set things correctly, then no. There's no difference. There's no difference in the brightness. Even if you set them both to be 150 nits, which is acceptable instead of 100 nits peak, they're the same. The X930E can show some brighter highlights in HDR, but then you also get some haloing around those objects because it's an edge-lit LED backlit LCD television. You can't avoid some haloing around objects. The OLED doesn't have any of that. So it's only if you want like 300 nits for SDR, in other words, dynamic mode. If you like to watch in vivid mode, the Sony will be brighter. But if you're setting these things correctly, then there isn't a difference. It's only in those highlights, and you get halos around those highlights. So I'd still go OLED.
So if he does go for a refurbished 2017 OLED, what is the differences between the B7 and the C7 series? I don't know this either, so go ahead.
Right, so if it's the B7P and the C7P, the only differences are purely cosmetic on the outside. They have a different stand, and they have a slightly different frame. That's it. The B7A, so it's important to know what letter is on the end of the thing. The B7A does not have Atmos built in.
Of course not. Why would they put an A on the end of it? Atmos?
Right, yeah. Whereas the B7P and the C7P do have Atmos built in.
Right.
So, if you wanted to take a Blu-ray player, an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, plug it in with HDMI, and have the Atmos listening mode come out of the TV's built-in speakers, then you want one of the ones that ends in a P, because those actually have Atmos built in. However, if your concern is, I have a full surround sound system with an AV receiver,
right,
and I want to use the built-in Netflix app so that I can have Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos, so I'm using HDMI audio return channel to send the Netflix audio out of the TV into my full AV receiver, the B7A can still do that. So it can send Atmos from its built-in apps out of the audio return channel. It can still do that. It just can't play Atmos from its built-in speakers. That's what the B7A gave up. So I'm pretty darn sure he has a full AV receiver and all that. In other words, no worries. Go ahead and get the B7A. That would be totally fine.
So what about LG's automatic brightness limiter? It's ABL. Is it noticeable in action? Does it make sense? Scenes that are mostly white appear too dim. Automatic brightness limiter. I don't know that that seems like something I would have turned off. To be honest.
Well, you can't. It's actually a protection mechanism, which is, let's say, a full white screen or a nearly full white screen goes up there, and you have set the OLED light to its maximum of 100, which equates to about 400 nits. After about 15 seconds, it'll lower that down to 130 nits. It says, I'm just not going to keep blasting out 400 nits of full white screen. It'll do it for a little while. But after a little while, it'll dim it right down to 130 nits and go, nope, not going to keep burning myself with this much brightness. And the same thing happens in HDR. If you keep that OLED light setting to 35 or lower, you pretty much don't see the automatic brightness limiter at all, because a setting of 30 is right around 150 nits. So it'll dim that down to 130, but your eye can't really see that difference very much at all. So if you keep the OLED light setting to 30, 35 or lower, because in a fully blacked out room, you'd want that setting at like 14 or 15. That's actually the correct setting. It's like really low. In HDR, it can happen, but in HDR, usually it's flashes. You know?
Yeah.
Flashes of light. It's not a sustained white at 400 nits. They just, like, that'd be blinding. Why would you do that as a content creator? So ultimately, no, if you keep the OLED light setting lower.
All right, we can finally move on to somebody else. Pack Devil on Twitter, because apparently they didn't say this is a real name. If you really want a projector, but you've got ambient light and some windows, what projector would be the best choice for under $1,500 and hopefully under $1,000 if possible? You're going to need This answer is twofold. One, you're going to need a light cannon.
Yes.
I mean, if that's what you really want. And I don't know, what is some ambient light? Like, is some ambient light like it peeks through the bottom of a door, or some ambient light you've got windows at the back and like those plastic blinds that don't really black that much light? Because there's a big difference in the amount of ambient light you got going on at that moment and the direction it's coming from as well. So I've reviewed some light cannons in the past. We're mostly business class projectors at this price, at that price point that you're looking at, $1,000 to $1,500, preferably under $1,000 is what you're asking for. You're going to be giving up a lot of features, including lens shift, which means you're going to have very good placement, or flexible placement, we'll put it to you that way. You got to be able to move the projector where it needs to be. You're not going to be able to put the projector where you want or what's convenient for you, and then have it shoot the image where you want it to go. Chances are you're not going to have as many options that way. You're also going to have to deal with fan noise. That's just something that in general is going to be the case. They're just going to be louder in general, but that's what you're going to have to deal with if you're going for something that's that inexpensive. Once you get higher prices, things get quieter, you get more options, and you get better black levels and a bunch of other stuff. So I know I reviewed an Epson a while back,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
What was that one? I don't remember what it was.
I don't remember exactly.
Series?
Yeah, it was within the 3, because they've had the 31, 32, 37, 36. I think you did the 3600. I think that's the one.
I don't feel like it was that. I thought it was the. I'm going to have to look it up. I can look it up real quick.
But the one I would recommend you would be Epson's Home Cinema 3100. Now that's $1,100, so we didn't get you to under $1,000, but it is well under $1,500. He was saying under $1,500, preferably under $1,000, but $1,100 certainly within that price range. The Home Cinema 3100 is a nice, bright 2600 lumen, and it actually hits like 2500 lumens, even in a fairly accurate color mode. And it does have lens shift, so you're not even giving up on the placement flexibility very much for that one. If you step all the way up to the 3700, that gets you up to 3000 lumens, but now you're getting pretty close to $1,500.
That's the 37 is what I did. The 37. You did the 37,
okay. So that one's getting pretty close to $1,500. It's still within the budget you said. It's now closer to $1,500 than it is to $1,000, whereas the 3100 is closer to $1,000 than it is to $1,500. But really the difference you're getting is just that even more light output from the 3700.
Yeah. And the 3700 is a real, it's a nice projector.
Yeah.
I can live with that for sure. It is a little bit louder than I'm comfortable with in the home theater, but it is not unbearable. It's not like it's chugging along
and it still has lens shift and zoom.
Yeah, it's pretty decent.
Yep.
Ted. This is going to be a multi-question thing? No, just one. Okay. Ted had tried sitting in his back row so that he could get the good imaging from his legacy audio silhouette on-wall speakers that, for whatever reason, just isn't working well when he sits in his front row. But there are downsides to sitting in his back row, too. The surround effects aren't nearly as good in the back row. That makes sense. And the bass is imbalanced. He just can't get everything to lock in the way he wants. He isn't crazy about rotating his whole setup 90 degrees. It's still the same room after all, and it'll only make a small difference in the length of the room, and no guarantees will even work as hope. Is it time to hire a professional acoustic guy?
Yes.
Do those people exist? Can you hire people to come in and do your room like this? Because I didn't know that was a job. Is that a job?
Oh, yes. Acousticians. Yeah, absolutely. They come in and analyze spaces as to how their acoustics react. They can, some even do like full out, what would you call it? Like waveform modeling. That
sounds real expensive. I got to be honest with you.
I honestly don't know. I've never hired an acoustician to professionally, measure one of my rooms, and whether or not they would actually nail down imaging, that's something I'm not sure about. They will nail down every form of reverb that exists in your room. They'll figure out exactly all the reflections and how the waves are interacting with one another, but imaging, I'm not actually sure if that's something they'll nail down. They might, but I don't know for sure that they will. There are two last things that I want Ted to try that are big hassles. Because
at this point everything's a big hassle. We tried all the easy stuff many times over.
So these legacy audio silhouettes, these are big, heavy, on-wall speakers.
Right.
But the last two, and we've kind of mentioned these already, but he hasn't done them yet because it's a big hassle. But I want you to take them off the wall. I want you to take them to a different, larger room. Some kind of stands, because they actually are deep enough that they could probably stand on stands of some sort. Get them on some kind of stands. Get yourself the same distance away from the speakers as when you're sitting in your front row in your theater. But now everything, your seat and these speakers, are in a larger room. Can you get the imaging to work in that situation? Because I want to find out if this is inherently the distance from the speakers.
Okay.
Or if this is a room thing. Because if you can sit the same distance away as you are when you're in your front row in your theater, If you can do that, but in a larger room and get the good imaging, we know it's something to do with your room.
Right.
If you confirm that, if you're like, I can be that same distance away and get the good imaging in the larger room, go back to the smaller room, sit in your front seat, have the speakers on stands instead of mounted to the wall, and now it's time to adjust the toe in and the distance from the wall, just like you would with regular tower speakers or regular bookshelf speakers. Because
you actually slide them across the wall side to side too.
Even that,
trying to separate them further apart.
He has kind of done, because he was so concerned with the listening angle at first that he has sort of slid them closer and farther apart, but he hasn't done the toe in and the moving them away from the wall like you would do with a regular bookshelf speaker. Because if you can confirm that the distance isn't the problem but the room is, now this second test of toe in and moving them away from the wall will confirm if it's a front wall problem. So because we have to figure out why this is happening.
Right.
What can you do about it if we don't know why? So those will now tell you why it's happening. Now, if you go to a larger room and sit the same distance away and you can never get the good imaging, it's just the distance from the speaker problem, in which case rotating the room 90 degrees to get you some more distance might be the solution. But we have to know that that's the why before we do anything like that.
All right. And then, yes, let's definitely tag in a professional acoustician.
Yeah, because I'm out of ideas at that point.
We're done.
I truly am.
We tap out.
Yeah.
Just send in somebody else, because we've tried. I mean, honestly, Ted, you got to admit, we've racked our brains over everything that we can think of, and it's not working. So, yes, let's get somebody else involved in this process. Mark. This comes from Twitter, again, I think. Do Tom and Rob or Rob use corner bass traps? What would be the effect of adding corner bass traps to his room versus putting 3-inch thick panels on his walls? I do use corner bass traps. I have the tri-traps
I
from
do too.
Gick. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them in here.
Now, I use regular bass traps that are 4 inches of insulation with a 1.5-inch air gap behind them, and I just straddle them across the corners. So they're not...
That's what I did before I had the tri-traps. I did the exact same thing. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is across a corner, you get a lot of bass bouncing around in there. And as it passes through let's take, for example, Rob's strap. Let's pretend it's a 4-inch thick panel, or your 3-inch thick panels. Okay, so you have a 3-inch thick panel. You put it directly on the wall, right? It goes through the panel, hits the wall, comes right back through the panel again. That space is 6 inches. It's gone 6 inches through this thing. Now, instead, what happens when you put it across a corner is it transfers from the sound energy transfers from passing through air to passing through solids. What is the solid? The trap. So it starts bouncing around that solid, and it comes out the other side. Now it's passing through air again, hits the wall, bounces off the wall. All this is losing energy. Goes back into remember, there's some distance back there that's going, maybe a foot. It's bouncing around there, 12 inches, maybe 18 inches, depending on the angle. Comes back out, has to go through the panel again. This means that it loses a lot more energy as it passes through, and it's able to absorb lower frequencies. That is the whole idea of the corner trap, is that it is able to absorb lower frequencies.
It's also more efficient in that with the very same panel, you are effectively covering more surface area in your room. Because if you put it right into the ceiling corner or right onto the floor corner, you've more or less covered 3 surfaces with one panel. Whereas, of course, if it's just mounted flush on a wall, you've covered one surface. Or if you put it right against the ceiling or right against the floor, maybe a little bit of 2 surfaces, but not as much as the surface area you've covered by having it straddling a corner. So it's just more efficient. It's a more efficient way to cover more surface area with the exact same panel. There's no magic that's going on here. Corner bass traps are not special. They're not somehow different from regular panels. It's just that you're covering more surface area by virtue of the geometry of what a corner is, and having more of an air gap behind that panel because, again, you're straddling it across a corner. That's all it is. There's nothing particularly special about it. You're just using geometry to your advantage. That's all it is. So would it be better to have one 3-inch thick panel that's straddling a corner or 3 3-inch thick panels that are on your wall? Well, You'd have to work out exactly how much surface area and exactly how much depth those panels end up giving you, but it might end up being pretty equal. But if you put one panel flat on a wall versus one panel straddling a corner, you've clearly covered more surface area and have greater depth with the one panel in the corner. So that's the efficiency of it.
Yeah. Miles's mother bought a brand new Samsung 40-inch MU6290 TV, whatever that is. Her old TV had terrible built-in speakers, so she used a pair of Vanna 2 transparent one self-powered speakers that worked with her old TV's headphone jack. The new Samsung has terrible built-in speakers too, so she wants to continue using her Vanna 2 speakers that actually sound pretty darn good. But the new Samsung doesn't have any sort of analog audio output. There's HDMI, ARC, and an HDMI, ARC, and an optical port. No other options. The Vanna 2s actually have an optical input, so Miles thought that would be no problem. But then they discovered something odd for movie discs and HDTV channels with 5.1 Dolby Digital. Things work just fine, but some TV channels are only in stereo, and whenever she was watching those channels, she got no sound. Miles read through the Samsung's TV manual, and sure enough, it states digital audio is only available with 5.1 channel broadcast. So for TV channels that are still broadcast only in stereo, apparently there's no digital audio output. Sure, why would you need that? So Miles is trying to figure out a way to use HDMI ARC, but his mother really does not want an AV receiver. He tried looking for some HDMI audio extractor, but none of them seem to work. What can be done to solve this?
So I read through this Samsung manual, and it is one of the worst written manuals.
Oh, come on. Compared to like Denon's old manuals, which were written alphabetically instead of like in any sort of the way you might actually use the thing. Those were the worst.
You want to know what's really annoying is when you go through the Samsung manual and it lists what settings are available, and you go there and you go, okay, here's the settings for audio output, and it tells you vaguely what the settings do, but nowhere does it list what the actual options are. Like, it doesn't say, here are the options with which you'll be presented. It just says, here's kind of vaguely what this does. I guess you'll figure it out when you see the TV. Doesn't help me when I can't see the TV.
Right, when you don't own it. Uh-huh.
But here's some of the really weird stuff that's going on here. So it very clearly says, this television can decode Dolby Digital 5.1. This television can decode DTS 5.1. But you have to manually select which one of those you want to decode. It will not automatically detect the type of signal and switch to that proper decoder. You have to manually tell it that it's either Dolby Digital or DTS.
Ugh.
Really weird. I'm assuming the same thing happens when it gets fed a 2-channel PCM signal.
Sure.
Because here's what we know for certain. It works with Dolby Digital 5.1. And if it played Dolby Digital 5.1 out of its built-in speakers, it necessarily must be able to decode 5.1, down mix it to 2-channel, and play it as 2-channel stereo, because it only has 2 speakers built into it. We also know that when his mom was playing something that was Dolby Digital 5.1, it was coming out of the optical port, going into the Vanna 2 speakers, and she got sound, which means it was down mixing it to 2-channel, because the Vanna 2 speakers don't have a Dolby Digital 5.1 decoder built into them. They're just a pair of self-powered speakers. So we know it can down mix it to 2-channel PCM. We know it can do that. The question is, can it accept a 2-channel PCM signal from an external source and then send it out of its optical port as 2-channel PCM? And I think it can, but because the manual doesn't actually tell me whether it's an option or not. So Samsung, there are settings. Within the settings, there is a sound menu. And within the sound menu, there is an expert settings menu. And there you have 2 things. HDMI input audio format, which you have to set manually. Because, gets fed a DTS signal and it goes, I don't know what to do with this until you tell me manually. And then there is a second one that is the digital audio output format.
Seems like that's the one you should be looking for.
So the digital audio output format, I'm assuming, is already set to 2-channel PCM because it was already working with her Vanna 2 speakers.
Sure.
It's the HDMI input audio format that I assume is set to Dolby Digital 5.1 because that's what was working.
Okay.
So if there is the option to set the HDMI input format to 2-channel PCM, which I darn sure hope there is, because who knows, maybe it's only Dolby Digital and DTS, but you know how a lot of AV receivers have that option? You can manually set it to PCM, Dolby Digital, or DTS, and then it will only accept that type of signal.
Right.
So I'm hoping that one of the options for HDMI input audio format, which is under the expert settings under sound under settings,
right,
that you can set it to PCM. Now you would have to set the cable box to output 2-channel. Not Dolby Digital 5.1, which you can do on any cable box. You would have to set her Blu-ray player to output 2-channel, not Dolby Digital, which you can do on any Blu-ray player. You can set it to output stereo. So now all the external sources will be sending stereo. The Samsung has been set to only accept stereo via HDMI, and we know the digital audio output is already set to 2-channel because it was already working. It should work. There should be no need for an audio extractor. We know this thing can convert everything to 2-channel. But it's really weird. It's really weird. But that's my answer to you.
All right, that's your answer. Boschko. Boschko's AV receiver and his power conditioner both have terminals on them labeled ground. Should he wire them together?
No.
It's like, isn't that grounding wire? It's like if you're having issues or whatever with whatever.
Well, the ground on the back of his AV receiver is for the phono input.
Right. Well, that's what I assumed for that one. But for the power conditioner, isn't that if you're having some? Yeah,
usually it's when your electrical wire is not properly grounded, which is possible. Right. That allows you to ground the case of the power conditioner independently so that you have a proper ground. And now everything that gets plugged into that thing that has a ground pin gets properly grounded instead of your improperly grounded electrical wiring in your building. So it's... But
the one in your receiver is all about the phono input.
That's the phono input, Don't wire those.
It's going to be right. It's going to be right there next to it. It's going to be whatever it is. MC. I never knew.
Moving magnet, moving coil. Yeah.
Whatever. So don't wire them together. That's not what it's for.
No.
He has 2 outlets available on his power conditioner. Should he plug his 2 subwoofers into those outlets, or is there no point in having subwoofers connected to a power conditioner? There is actually negative points to having power conditioners and subwoofers mated. Every subwoofer manufacturer will tell you plug it directly into the wall. We've got fuses in there. Don't worry about it. If there's a power surge, the fuses should blow and you should be safe. Okay, that's what they're going to tell you. But I'm going to tell you there's a chance that when the capacitors drain because there's some loud bass hit or something, and the subwoofer the amplifier is going to try to fill everything back up as fast as it can. It's going to try to draw as much power from the wall as it can. Well, as soon as that happens, your power conditioner is going to throttle it down and say, whoa, got some sort of surge going on over here. Better throttle you down, which makes the amplifier try to draw even more power, which makes the power conditioner try to throttle it down even more until you blow your fuses. So,
which Tom has actually done. This isn't a theoretical
multiple times. I have done this for real. I have done this. It is very, very, very upsetting, to be honest with you. So don't plug it into your power conditioner.
Nope.
He'd like to have some more audio zones around his house, perhaps as many as 5 different rooms. He'd like to be able to use an app to control which music is playing in each room. He's noticed that his Onkyo TXRZ810 receiver has extra binding ports labeled Zone 2A and Height Zone 2B, plus extra pairs of pre-outs labeled Zone 2 and Zone 3. Does that mean he could run 5 zones from just his receiver? If not, what's the easiest way to get the setup he's looking for? No. You've got 3 zones on your receiver. You can either... put them out via your zone outs, your RCA connections. Probably doesn't have an HDMI, or you can power it within your receiver using Zone 2 and Zone 2A and Zone 2B or whatever it is.
Yeah, what your RZ810 has is 7 amplifiers.
Right.
You are able
so you can do 5.1 and then power a second zone. Right.
That's right. You are able to assign 2 out of those 7 amplifiers to power a second zone if you want to. And this actually, for whatever reason, allows you to physically connect a Zone 2A and a Zone 2B, but you could only switch between those 2 things. They can't both play at the same time.
Right.
And if you are using one of the powered Zone 2, either A or B, you can then only have 5.1 in your main theater. You can't have 7.1 in your main theater anymore because 2 of those amplifier channels have been stolen to power your Zone 2.
Reassigned. We won't call them stolen.
Well, sure. The Zone 2 pre-outs are the same circuitry as the zone 2 binding posts. So that's not a completely separate zone. It's one or the other. You can use the pre-outs or you can reassign the binding posts. Zone 3 is its own independent thing. So you could have your main zone and you could have a zone 2 either powered or through the pre-outs, and you could have a zone 3, but you can definitely not do 5 from the AV receiver. So you're going to need to do something in addition to this. I would suggest, so this Onkyo actually has several different ways that you can do multi-room audio. They have their Flare Connect built in, which is their own thing. It's like Denon's Hios. It's like Yamaha's Music Cast. They have their own wireless speakers that are called Flare Connect wireless speakers. Onkyo and Pioneer make them, since Onkyo owns Pioneer now. So that's one way you could do it. You could buy Flare Connect wireless speakers, put those in your 4 other rooms, and it will all work under the Onkyo Flare Connect app, exactly the way you described. But like Hio speakers, like Music Cast speakers, like Sonos speakers, they're kind of a little bit overpriced in my opinion. So there's another one. It has DTS Play-Fi.
Right, I've used that.
DTS Play-Fi is a very nice app that works very well for whole house audio, and various manufacturers make DTS Play-Fi speakers, including SVS now. Their Prime Wireless is a DTS Play-Fi speaker, but lots of manufacturers make DTS Play-Fi speakers. So if you want to use the DTS Play-Fi ecosystem, that's entirely an option.
Right, and for that, you could put any number of speakers in. I think it's like something ridiculous, like 15 total speakers or something. I can't remember, but any number of speakers in any number of rooms. Assign those speakers names for each of the rooms they're in, and then make zones yourself.
Yeah, you can group them. They can each be individual. Whatever you want to do.
It doesn't matter.
It's very flexible.
It's extremely flexible, and it's also easy and intuitive. I really like the Play-Fi ecosystem, and this is actually what I was going to talk about before I saw all the stuff that you're going to talk about here. But the Play-Fi for me is the easiest thing to do. It's just literally find the speakers that have it, place them in all the rooms you want them to be in, and then just go through and connect them all one at a time. It works so well, and it is so easy to do that I would highly recommend that.
Yeah, and with that, you're not strictly limited to only Flare Connect, because Play-Fi is supported by multiple different brands.
And so this would all be just streaming from your phone, basically, at this point.
Yeah, it's all controlled by an app on your phone, yeah. Now, there's one last thing, which is that this Onkyo also has Chromecast built in. It's already got Chromecast built in, so you could just get Chromecast audio devices for your other 4 rooms. You'll control it all through your Chromecast device. I mean, literally, you pick any streaming service and then just say, I want to cast this to 1 room, 2 rooms, all 5 rooms. Again, you can select whatever you want. And that's a cheap way. However, the Chromecast audios, of course, have no amplification built in, so you have to have self-powered speakers or plug the Chromecast audio devices into an amplifier, which then powers your speakers. So, you know, there might be more components to it, but the Chromecast audios are super cheap. What are they, like $30? $35 or something like that?
Yeah.
The separate Chromecast audios for his other rooms.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're about $35.
They're like $35. And then your AV receiver already has Chromecast built in, so as your 5th zone, it's already got that. So 3 possible solutions. I probably wouldn't go Flare Connect, because that's the most limited and the most expensive. So if you want the cheapest, Chromecast audios could get the job done. DTS Play-Fi is pretty nice. Yeah,
I think you end up spending about the same, and I think the Play-Fi is. I haven't used Chromecast audio, so I've used Chromecast.
It's pretty easy. I mean, it's you know, you pick whatever service you want on your phone, and then just say cast this where to this speaker and this speaker. There you go.
All right. He has a TV antenna for over-the-air TV. Can you use that same antenna for FM radio? I don't think so, but I don't know.
Usually you can.
Yeah. Why?
I mean, FM is right in between channel 6 and 7 of VHF. So if your antenna can pick up very high frequency radio broadcasts, it can pick up FM.
Yeah. All right. So here's a pair of Polk RTI A1 bookshelf speakers that he'd like to wall mount. They are front ported with slightly curved sides. He'd like to be able to aim them and angle them down slightly. He's in Canada and would like to be able to order from Amazon.ca. So what do we recommend? I'm looking at the back of the speaker here. It's got a
keyhole mount on the back there.
Keyhole mount and with indentation thingy. It looks
Yeah.
like, does that whole plate come off and you can replace it with something else?
I have no idea. It's Polk.
Yeah.
But they got a keyhole mount. And since they have a keyhole mount, my number one choice, I would point you to Sewell Direct. Now, Sewell Direct is based in the States. Their price is listed in US dollars, but they ship to Canada directly. So you can order directly from them. So I know it's not Amazon.ca, but Sewell Direct. And they have some nice pivoting, tilting mounts that can hold, 22 pounds. And these Polk speakers are about 12 pounds, which is important because a lot of the cheapest mounts only hold like 7 to 10 pounds.
Right.
And these speakers are a bit heavier than that, but the Sewell ones are rated for 22 pounds. They work with a keyhole mount, so they work with what's already integrated on the back of your speaker, let you do the pivoting, aiming, tilting that you want to do. And if you get them from Sewell Direct, they're, a little over $15 American.
Yeah, it's $15.95 right now.
$15.95. So that is American, and yes, there's a shipping charge to Canada, but it's like $8 or something to ship it to Canada. So all in, I don't know, was it going to be $35 to $40 Canadian?
I don't know.
Somewhere in there. But
like
those are the ones I like the best. So Sewell, we'll have the link for it at avrant.com, but it's SewellDirect.com, and it's their universal bookshelf speaker wall mount. Now, you can get them from Amazon.ca, but they're like $67 Canadian from Amazon. So it's kind of ridiculous.
That seems expensive.
It is expensive. It's silly. Now, Amazon does also sell B-Tech. B-Tech has the wall mounts that I like that are like the side clamping ones.
The ones that grab onto it.
Yeah, they grab on. And even though you've got curved sides, they're not like super curved, and a portion of the front is where the thing would grip it. So those would work, but they're like $70 Canadian. Because for whatever reason, speaker mounts are crazy overpriced.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how much the shipping is from Sewell. It really is what it comes down to.
Yeah,
right?
no, I looked at it's like
if
$8.
The shipping's too excessive, then yeah. All right, PJ of the Absorptive Cats. I guess a cat. That is an absorptive cat. If you are watching our YouTube video, the finished one, not the one that's happening while we're talking, there is a cat, and he looks plush. PJ wants a new TV for his dad. He'll be sitting about 7 feet away, no light control, and he doesn't want anything too expensive. He's leaning towards a 50-inch Vizio M Series, but if he went down to the E or D series, he could get larger size for the same price. What do we recommend? I think we recommend a 55-inch TCL without looking at what Rob wrote down. 55-inch TCL.
Yeah. Specifically the one you can get from Best Buy, actually, which is the P605 instead of the $50 more expensive P607. And the only difference is the remote.
What's the difference in the remote?
You don't have the headphone jack built into the remote of the P605.
I can't live without a headphone. That's a $50 headphone jack. That's 25 cents, if that, worth of components right there.
So yeah, I'd get the one from Best Buy, $600, which is the exact same price as the 50-inch Vizio M Series. So you're getting 5 inches more diagonal, plus 72 zones of local dimming instead of 32, plus Roku built in, which ain't bad, and it still has Dolby Vision. So 55-inch, a little bit bigger, same price, TCL P605 from Best Buy.
David is considering an Onkyo SBT-A500 soundbar. Oh, it's a soundbar. That's why I was like, no. All right. It offers Atmos and DTS as a 3.1.2 configuration for $900. You know, it won't be the same as a full AV receiver and speakers, but he needs the form factor. Will it be good enough? Anything else we'd recommend? I so hate soundbars.
And this one isn't even like your normal soundbar where everything's built into the soundbar. This one actually has like a separate kind of receiver unit that you plug everything into, and then you run one cable from that to the soundbar.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you, dude. I am more a fan of, first of all, putting racing stripes on a Pinto does not make it go fast. And calling something an Atmos soundbar does not make it Atmos. I would just go for a soundbar that was literally not trying to do anything other than maybe Atmos 3 speakers. I mean, really, I wanted to just do 2 or maybe 1. I want mono coming out of this thing because it's so close together that who cares? But for me, I would stay away from anything that sounded gimmicky, like, oh, it's got this and that and this, and it comes with a subwoofer, and it's wireless, and it's got overhead Atmos speakers that don't actually exist, but
reflecting off of the off the ceiling.
Nothing. Yes, I would stay away from all that. I'll be honest with you. For $900, I would take that money and go straight over to Yamaha and give it to them.
Now, I can't disagree with that, but I really like Sony's brand new soundbars that have just come out. And one reason why I like them is they do Dolby Atmos and DTS-X. Like, they're compatible with both formats.
Sure.
And best of all, they have one that's $600 instead of $900. That's what I like even more.
That's nice. Because
until now, we haven't had a soundbar that can decode Atmos and DTS-X for like under $900. Well, $600, that's pretty significant savings. And it decodes.
But who cares if it decodes this stuff? It does. I mean, what is it going to do with it once it decodes it?
Well, it
can't reproduce it.
It does a pseudo, the
whatever, dude. You know what? You can. No, I would take that $900 he's about to spend. Go to Yamaha, get one of their DSP bar thingies. What are they called? The
digital sound projectors.
That's it. Yeah, digital DSP bars, and just whatever one of those that you can afford, because those actually can give you surround sound in a convincing way in more than one format. It will try to bounce it around the room. If that works, doesn't work, it can do the phase thing that kind of tricks you into thinking it comes.
Yeah,
from
I can't
both
disagree
sides.
with the Yamaha suggestion. That's a very good suggestion.
If I had $900 to spend, that's who I would give my money to. I would definitely. If you want to spend less, I would spend as little as possible and get a sound bar that is trying to do nothing but give you sound. Like none of this other crap.
I like the $600 Sony because none of the Yamahas that do Atmos and DTS-X are that inexpensive. None of them are $600.
No.
That's why I liked that Sony, which is.
And you wouldn't think we'd get through to last week's questions in this podcast. Look we've done it already. It's only 11 o'clock. I will go a few more questions.
Okay,
into this, but we are fine. We are fine.
I just wanted to say
we're catching up.
The model number of the Sony is the HTX 9000F, because there's a 900F television, but the soundbar is a 9000F.
Whatever. Jonathan. As we mentioned last week, it's Jonathan's birthday this month, and he's looking to buy himself something nice. He set up his home office, so he needs some kind of music system. It seems like everyone else already has Sonos, and he wants something different. Should he consider a Devialet? Whatever. Phantom. He got to hear all three of their models in person. He thought they were very impressive, although they're also very expensive. He found a Sound Guy's review that was very much in line with his own impressions, so what should he do? If you like them, you should buy them if you can afford them.
$3,500 for a mono speaker.
For $3,500 for a mono speaker, I would take that money and give it to KEF for their what are they called? The
LS50Ws, the powered versions of the LS50s.
Those powered versions. Clint loves those things.
I do
loves
too. They're
them.
Great.
And they are beautiful. And I mean, I know this thing that you're showing us. I don't know if you're showing the
picture. Yeah. I mean, it's very unique looking.
It's very unique. It looks like it's the eyeball of a robot that's going to somehow try to kill you.
I mean, it looks like it's straight out of Portal, doesn't it? Doesn't it kind of look
does.
like one of the sentries from Portal?
It does look like a sentry. Oh my God. Where's the cake? Yes, I like the way it looks, but I will tell you, I would give that money to KEF right away.
Oh yeah. If you want to spend now, if you don't want to spend that much, I'd take a hard look at SVS's new Prime Wireless speakers, because DTS Play-Fi, it's got all the wireless stuff built in. I bet they sound pretty good.
Honestly, if you're looking for something that looks unique the way that this thing looks unique, I mean, you're not going to really. We're not going to recommend anything like that. But the KEF speakers, I mean, they actually do look really cool. They don't have a grill on them. They're kind of they have like a rounded grill. They're the concentric driver,
and they have different color options too.
Do that, Dale? Well, let's see. I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
there you go. Okay, Chris recently moved into a larger house, but the basement room he's using as his actual theater is actually smaller than his previous theater room. The new room is about 11 by 17 by 8. Boy, that sounds familiar. I think mine's only slightly bigger than that. Okay, here we go,
that's
buddy.
An okay size for a room.
I think it's perfectly fine. Yeah. Yes, that's right. We've got a lot of pictures here, so we're going to be talking about. Oh, he's got dogs.
He does.
Oh, he's got little dogs.
I'll show Chris the doggies right now. There's the doggos.
There you go. A Yamaha RX-A3070 receiver and Emotiva XP-A3 amplifier. They're driving a 7.1.2 setup with clips reference 2. Oh my goodness. Reference 2 series front tower fronts, tower surrounds, and wall-mounted surround backs, and a center Atmos module. A center Atmos modules up top of his front speakers, and then a SVS PB12-NSD sub. With a smaller room size, he's positioned the couch on the left wall, a love seat on the right wall, and his primary single seat is facing the TV On the 2/3 back wall that has a staircase directly behind it, the seating arrangement has resulted in his tower surrounds being positioned in front of his seats. So he's wondering, do we think he should downsize to a 5.1.2 configuration by eliminating this tower surrounds? Is there some other position we think would work better? I read this and I didn't. Oh, I see. He's got towers for everything.
He's got towers for the fronts and for the surrounds, but due to whatever placing, the tower surrounds have ended up in front of all of his seats instead of beside or behind them. The tower fronts look fine. The upward firing modules on top of those tower fronts look fine.
Why are they in front of the things? Why aren't they behind them?
Yeah, no, I'm like, Why
don't you just move them?
Yeah, move the tower surrounds so that they're...
move the couches. If you have to move the chairs closer to the TV so you can fit the speakers, just move the speakers. I don't understand.
Well,
I don't understand this.
I'm like, it looks to me like he could put so his surround left could go behind the 3-seater couch instead of in front of it.
Sure.
And then the surround right could go basically in the corner beside his one front-facing seat. He'd have to move the end table that he's got beside there, but put it there. And then repurpose the wall-mounted surround back speakers as like top middles or top rears, whatever you want to call them. Same thing, but go to a 5.1.4 Atmos setup instead of, not having 4 overheads. That's what I would do in here.
All right. Given your existing speakers, I agree with what Rob just said. That being said, you should get rid of your existing speakers. That's what I think.
Why?
I think I see no reason for him to have tower surrounds in any.
Well, sure. It's just he already has them. Obviously,
he does already have them. But what I'm saying is that you could get rid of those.
Sell the tower surrounds.
Sell the tower surrounds. Get rid of the Atmos modules. Put everything that's supposed to be up actually up. Get some surround. Get some
you could actually
birds
just
or whatever.
Take the upward firing modules and put them on the ceiling.
Put
you don't
them
have
on the
to get
ceiling.
rid of them. Just reposition them instead of upward firing. Put them.
I would have already done that. I would have put them. As front heights or something like that, or top fronts or whatever the heck we're going to call them these days. And I would have done that already because there's no reason to bounce this thing off the ceiling if this is a dedicated room. Yeah. It's not dedicated if you have to use Atmos modules. Okay, that's the way I think about it. My room, I suffer from the same thing you do, and believe me when I say this, when I'm saying to you, I'm also saying to myself, I wish I didn't have tower speakers at all. I think they're too big for this room and they're harder to place, and I would be much happier with bookshelf speakers. Now,
I mean, the front of his room doesn't look like the problem at all to me.
It's fine. Yeah. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I got no problems with it. But there's so much stuff here. Just think about what could happen if you could take that subwoofer and actually scoot it back to that corner and then put a little stand on it and then put his bookshelf speaker up there instead. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It gives you more flexibility in placement. When you got this tower speaker that you got to negotiate around, you end up with running into problems, which is what I'm saying. And believe me, I'm not insulting you in any way, shape, or form. I'm not saying you have bad speakers.
Well, and I mean, he repurposed what he already owned for a smaller room. So sometimes this is what happens.
Well, the first thing I would do is absolutely move those tower surrounds back. I don't see any reason why they need to be that way. Then I would, at the same day, same moment, the same instant, I would take your surround backs and your Atmos modules and I put them on the ceiling. Yep. And then see where I was at then. Yeah, you
already have 9 speakers, so let's get some 5.1.4 action going.
Yeah. And I would eBay those surround speakers and get yourself something on wall that it frees up some floor space for other stuff. Chris is setting up an Atmos system in his home theater, and he'd like to be able to get Atmos content from Netflix. According to Netflix's website, only Xbox Ones, 2017 and newer LG OLED TVs, and Windows 10 PCs are listed as the devices capable of outputting Atmos audio from Netflix. Are there other devices that simply aren't listed on Netflix's website?
Nope.
I don't think so. I mean,
Netflix is pretty good about being on top of that.
So Windows 10 PCs, does that also include like an NVIDIA Shield?
No.
Is that like it's not running it's running like an Android thing, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. Okay. No, it's Windows 10 either in the dedicated Windows 10 Netflix app, its own desktop app,
right,
or through the Edge browser.
Well, oh God.
but
Edge browser is awful.
That's your only two options there. So interestingly, if you want both Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos from Netflix, your only option is an LG OLED TV, 2017 or 2018.
You have to go through their app.
Yeah, because the Xbox One can't output Dolby Vision right now, and neither can a Windows 10 PC can't output Dolby Vision. So you basically want an LG OLED 2017 or 2018 if you want all the Dolby goodies from Netflix. Now, clearly things in the future might get added. With the Apple TV 4K starts outputting bitstream audio, it should be able to do it, but right now it doesn't do that. The Chromecast Ultra, it can output Dolby Vision, but it isn't outputting Atmos right now. So it might happen, but right now their website is up to date.
All right. Adriano would like to connect Bluetooth headphones with active noise canceling to a flat panel TV. Adriano's goal is to have 6 pairs of wireless headphones for the patients in his dental office so they can watch ceiling-mounted TVs while the noise canceling helps to reduce the sound of the dental drill. That sound is actually bone induction.
Yeah.
You hear that anyways. Okay?
That was my number one thought. I'm like, I don't think active noise canceling is going to work for a dentist drill because the sound
that's
isn't
bone
going
induction,
through
dude. That's
their
going straight
ears
through their
via
skull.
Yeah. It's not traveling by the air.
This actually, I mean, I'm okay with you giving them headphones,
yes.
But believe me that they are going to hear. In fact, it's probably going to drown out what they're listening to on the headphones, unless the headphones are exceptionally loud.
Yeah, because that is direct,
yes,
like conduction of the sound. That's like putting on noise canceling earphones and then standing on a train rail and saying you're not going to feel the train coming.
Yeah.
It's two different mediums sending the sound wave. So I really don't know but it might help a little bit. I guess some of the sound is the drill, the sound of the drill in the air going to your ears as well as directly conducting through the teeth themselves. So it might reduce some of it, but they're going to hear that drill from their teeth themselves.
So are Bose still the best noise canceling headphones around? He wants over-the-ear headphones since they will be used by different patients throughout the day, and they need to have a good battery life. I don't know. There's a bunch of different I have a problem with this whole wireless option, but let's go on. Let's answer the question first. Go on.
So I mean, Bose is still like their Quiet Comfort 25 and 23. The 25 is the wired version. The 25 and 35. 25 is wired. 35 is wireless.
Right.
So those do still tend to get the top ratings. But Sennheiser recently put out a new pair of headphones. It's their HD 4.50, which are Bluetooth and noise canceling, and they're really highly rated. All the reviews are like.
What's the price differential, though, really, is the question.
This is coming up a little later, but he's in Australia.
Oh, well, that's another thing.
So I was just going by Australia, Amazon Australia. The Quiet Comfort 35s are 460 Australian dollars.
Wow.
The Sennheiser HD 4.50s are 260 Australian dollars. So it's $200 less expensive, and every review says they're very close to being just as good. Battery life is about 20 hours, so that's a long work day if it's not going to last that.
Better remember to plug them in. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But that it ticks all the boxes for definitely more affordable than the Bose. So I take a good look at those.
So could he connect Bluetooth noise canceling headphones directly to his TV somehow, or would he need a third-party Bluetooth transmitter? I have never heard of a TV that has a Bluetooth transmitter. I'm sure one existed at some point.
Yeah, I wouldn't say never because I'm sure there's something that does, but I wouldn't count on it.
But I have not ever heard of such a thing.
Yeah.
So yes, you will need to get some sort of transmitter. They exist, and they're not super expensive. And you're not going super far. I mean, it's going to be a little dongle that's going to hang off the back of the thing. So you're just going to make sure there's a good line of sight between your patient and the TV, which there should be. So
and double check what the audio outputs on the back of your TVs are, because some of them have a headphone jack, some of them have an optical output. So just
some of them have RCAs, right?
Yeah, so just make sure that whatever Bluetooth transmitter you get has the correct input for whatever your TVs can output. But again, I just plugged Bluetooth transmitter into Amazon Australia and plenty of options came up. And they don't have to be super expensive. So doable.
Could he use a third-party Bluetooth transmitter and a Bluetooth receiver to plug in any standard pair of wired headphones? And the answer to that question is also yes. I mean, that those things exist.
Yeah, you could. However, I'm thinking if this is in a dentist's office, I don't want any wire hanging down either side or both sides. It just
to me this is where I don't agree. I think that you could just like literally to the back of the chair attach the receiver and then coil the headphones right there with a hook, to hang on to the head things that plugs into that receiver thing. Then the person sits down, they put their head down, you take the headphones, you just extend them and then put them on their head. The wires are falling down behind their shoulders. They're never in the way, and you have it tied up right there. I think, and then your price for your headphones goes from $200 to maybe $75.
Yeah, and I was talking about Creative Labs.
Significant saving.
Creative Labs makes a very good Bluetooth headphone receiver. So that Creative is usually available worldwide. They're a pretty big brand.
Right. So he says, what's the most cost-effective way to get this whole setup going? 6 pairs of wireless noise-canceling headphones in 6 different rooms, keeping in mind that he's in Australia. Well, we've kind of discussed it. You're going to have to look into some of it, but if it were me, I would be highly thinking about, and if you've got a friend or, I don't know how much flexibility you have in wiring. This could be like a hardwired thing too. It could literally be,
I guess.
There should be a way of just running a cable from whatever outlet is out there down to the floor right behind the chair there, plugging in the headphones, putting them on people's heads. It's to me, you could do a wired solution. If you've got an easy, cheap way of doing that, a brother-in-law who's an electrician or a contractor or something like that, or just handy, because this is not brain surgery. We're talking about a 3.5 millimeter cable for the most part, or some sort of shielded RCA cable that's going up there. It's really not that big of a deal. That being said, if you're going to definitely go with the wireless and the Bluetooth, they're going to be in different rooms. So there shouldn't be too much interference, and there's usually more than one channel
Bluetooth's
on
only
these
30
things.
feet. Yeah.
Yeah. And if there's, especially with all the equipment and stuff you have in there, I'd be shocked if you could put them all in one room and walk to the next room and they would still work. I would be absolutely floored if that was the case. I can't walk out of my bathroom and have them still work, or to my bathroom for that matter.
No, I got the distinct impression from his email that he was looking at Bose. So if you were looking at that as your price point, then even just going to the Sennheisers, which are still not cheap, but very good and tick all the boxes.
$200 a pop, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost half price.
Yeah, $1,200 just for that. Let's do one more. Carlton. In Carlton's current house, he has 5 separate zones. Well, there you go. You could talk to that other dude. He has either a pair of tower or bookshelf speakers in each zone with 5 Sonos Connect amps to power everything. There you go. Deal with that, dude. He's in the process of building a new house, and he wants something much more integrated and visually hidden. He wants in-ceiling speakers for each zone, and he'd like to keep the price of the speakers just about $500 per room, but he still wants nice-sounding music and the ability to turn up the volume pretty loud, not just low background stuff. He visited a Sonance, which is not Sonos, Sonance demo and heard 2 of their setups, one with a large 8-inch in-ceiling speakers in stereo configuration and one with 5 much smaller 3.5-inch in-ceiling speakers plus an in-ceiling sub. The 5.1 setup sounds dramatically better than the 2-channel setup in every way. He wants that kind of sound quality, but the 5.1 Sonance setup costs $2,900. So maybe he can install
$500.
Yeah.
It's a big price tag.
Maybe so. Could he install $400 in-ceiling speakers in each zone, along with a Dayton Audio Sub 1000L, which is a distribution amp, to achieve something similar? The sub.
Well, no, that's a subwoofer. The Sub 1000L is a.
Okay. Yeah. I figured. I thought. Okay. Sub. So he wants a subwoofer in the room. The Sub 1000L is a slim design 10-inch subwoofer that can be mounted to a wall or hidden under a sofa. It was one of the budget subwoofers top picks by Brent Butterworth. What speakers and what configuration should he go for? So you're going to need a distribution amp to make this happen. And putting multiple speakers up there is a pretty good idea. Especially if you're going for loud.
Yeah. And more even coverage throughout the room.
My biggest pet peeve with really any distributed audio system is when there's, and this is what was like in my house, there's one point where all the sound's coming from.
Yeah.
So you stand next to that and no one can hear anything. They're yelling at each other. You stand far away, no one can hear the music. So having a bunch of different speakers evenly distributed up there, even if they're all playing mono, is nice. You know, the subwoofers, they're just there to fill out the low end that this thing can't do. So, and it's kind of omnidirectional. I don't love the idea of putting it underneath a sofa. I got to be honest with you, especially people are going to be sitting on said
He
sofa,
mostly wanted to do it like on or even in the wall.
Which I think is a much better option there. Or in the ceiling. I mean, you got the rest of them up there. Throw it up there. What's the big deal?
Or like on the ceiling. It's got the bracket right there. You can mount it to stuff, this sub.
So we talk a lot about the outdoor speaker depot.
Yeah.
Thing, but I feel like this is not going to be good enough for what he wants.
I know. I think he wants something a little nicer.
Yeah. So we already talked about Aperion Audio today, but those are $300 a pair, so it's $150 speaker. You could put, I mean, you're going to go over budget pretty quickly there. So what you got, Rob?
Normally my go-tos here would be like KEF, but they're like, even their 5 1/4 inch one is like $170 now. Their prices have gone up a lot, and that's each. $170 each. So that's really not an option. So RBH, if you can get them, because RBH A600s, really nice sounding, under $100 each. That'd be the way I would go here for really good sound quality. That's a step above the mono prices in the outdoor speaker depots, but not as expensive as the KEFs or even the Aperions. The Aperions would be a really good choice here if you can get the budget up a little bit.
Right.
But the RBH...
It's not just a little bit. He's going to have to almost...
Yeah.
1.5 times per room.
But the question is whether you're going to be able to get the RBHs, because we've heard from several people it's not necessarily the easiest thing. But I mean, they do have dealers all around the country, or people who will, ship it to you if you're out of state or whatever. So the RBH A600s, that's the way I'd go here. And then I would go ahead with that slim Dayton sub. Why not?
Yeah, I think no real problems with that.
Yeah.
So his plan is to have the amplifiers for each zone all centrally located. What you're going to do is you're going to have a distribution amp that's going to have like a bajillion channels in it. What you're going to do.
Usually 12.
Yeah, and then you're going to be able to wire these things in series.
Yeah, I'd go series. I'd still go series.
And then that way you can, save on amplifier power and still get all the sound that you need out of these things. And then the distribution amp will be able to assign music to the different zones and all that other stuff. And you have multiple inputs to it. And there's usually an app that controls it. What's the one that we talk about? That's why I thought it was a Dayton. Is it Dayton? Isn't it Dayton that does that?
There is, yeah. So Dayton has two. They have 3 different options. So they have 2 that are just distribution amps, which let you either plug a separate source for each separate zone. So they have 6 zones, 6 stereo zones. So that's 12 amps. But you can either plug a separate source into each, each channel individually, or you can plug in 2 sources that are shared between any of those 6 zones. But they also have a full 6x6 matrix one, which lets you plug in as many as 6 sources and power as many as 6 zones with any source going to any zone or any combination of zones. So the matrix one is pretty nice. Yeah,
that's the one you want.
And it's controlled by an app on your phone. So that's pretty nice.
So he's planning to have the amplifier for each zone centrally located. It might just end up being one amplifier, just the one we were just talking about.
Yeah, the one matrix.
And after hearing the Sonnets demo, he'd like to have a subwoofer in each room as well. How important is it for to have a crossover between the in-ceiling speakers and the sub? How could you get all that hooked up without overspending? Well, I don't know how much you're planning on spending on all these different individual amps. So we just saved you a bunch of money. If you were thinking of going like Emotiva route or something like that, even though Emotiva is inexpensive compared to most amplifiers, in this case it's a lot more expensive. So yes, you do need to cross them over. What you don't want to do is send full range to your speakers and then have something less than full range sent, and then full range sent to your subwoofer as well or something like that, because then your speakers are going to be trying to do everything. They should roll off. They should roll off naturally, but it would be nice not to. So if you really want to save money, then just send full range to everything.
Yeah, because can. So you would be using the crossover knob on the sub to just trial and error, try and get as good a blend as you can, because the speakers are getting a full range signal and they're trying to play as low as they're able to, or as much as the amplifier can allow them to, and then you're manually turning the crossover knob on the subwoofer to attempt to get the best blend possible. But yeah, if you can employ a crossover, it would be nice. It would be better.
Did you say blessed bend?
I did.
It's blessed bend.
I transposed the L.
Blessed.
Yeah, that's the title, isn't it?
That's the title of the podcast.
So what could work really nicely is a mini DSP 2x4, right?
Right.
So whatever.
But how are you going to do that for each individual zone? Because that's RCA in and out, right? But it's RCA in and out.
Yeah, but you'd have your source. Your source device plugs into the mini DSP's inputs, and then 2 of the mini DSP's 4 outputs feed the distribution amp that powers your speakers, and then 1 of the outputs gets fed directly to the subwoofer in each room. And you use the mini DSP to create the crossover. So the speakers are only getting the high pass signal, and the sub is only getting the low pass signal.
Yeah, but if you have multiple sources,
then it's a problem. Then you need a switch.
It's a problem. Because you don't have a way of going. So you'd have to have a.
And I don't know what he wants to do for sources. I'm not sure what he wants to do for. If he wants to keep using Sonos as sources, or if he wants to do Chromecast audios, or some new thing. I'm not sure what he wants to do for sources.
Yeah, I don't see how the mini DSP works.
It only works if you can put it in between the source and the amplifier.
And there's only one source.
There'd only be one source in that case, yeah.
You can only have one source if you did it that way. So you may very well be stuck not being able to do this. Or you may have to plug... You may have to go speaker wire connection to your sub. The sub crossover knob would have to be able to actually operate as a crossover and then have the outputs in the sub.
Very few subs do that.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm thinking too.
I don't know if this one does. I mean, it does have high-level speaker wire outputs. I don't know.
We'd have to look into that.
Yeah.
You have to, or maybe better yet, you look into it. So what we're saying here is this. If you have, in order to get each of the matrixing that we're talking about, where you can send anything to anywhere you want, that only works is if you have a single source.
Yeah.
Because the high-level stuff, no problem. That will go straight to whatever source, whatever room you want it to. But the subwoofer information, if we do this, it goes between the source and the amp, and the distribution amp, which means it splits off the bass to go to the subwoofers, which means it needs to have a way of sending the right bass to the right rooms, if that makes sense. And there's no way to do that I can think of. I don't think a switch does it. I mean, a switch doesn't do it.
So, yeah, no, I just looked it up. The high-level outputs on the Dayton Sub 1000L, it says right in the manual, there is no high-pass filter. So
no high-pass filter.
It's just parallel. So the sub on its own can't do it, unfortunately.
Could he buy a box that was a high-level, a high-pass filter at speaker wire level?
Gosh, HSU used to sell one, but they don't anymore, unfortunately.
So that's what we would have to look for.
I mean, they have it for car audio stuff.
It's got to exist.
Oh, it exists. It might look a little janky, but it's all hidden in a closet anyway.
It's going to be in the closet. I mean, it's going to be
But that's not even like a very efficient way to do it, because the amplifier already amplified the full level signal, and then you're just like essentially turning the bass into heat before it gets to your speaker. It's not really helping your amplifier.
Yeah, we need the amplifier to have a crossover.
You know what?
We need it.
Just run the in-ceiling speakers full range, honestly. It's like they're meant to anyway,
honestly, at this point, that's kind of where I'm going with this too. At this point, I'm like, you know what? Don't worry about trying to have a crossover. Let the speakers run full range.
Look at that. On our own podcast, we just talked ourselves out of the thing we said to do in the course of...
I was just trying to figure out how it works with multiple sources, and it doesn't work.
It doesn't work with multiples, unless you have an RCA switch ahead of the mini DSP for each room. That's a whole janky thing. Man, that would be janky.
That would be a nightmare. It'd be like a harmony programming like spreadsheet from hell. It would be huge. All right, that's it for this podcast. So you'll figure it out.
Plug your sources into Matrix and run them all full range. There you go.
Run them all full range. That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So we have Terry
right?
G.
Yeah. Who's left?
Yeah, Terry G, Byron, Nick, Peter, Nelson, and Infinite Gary, who has a whole bunch of questions because of course he does.
All right. Well, I mean, we used to call him Infinite Gary because of this Infinite Baffle subwoofer, and now it's for the questions. All right. This is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. I want to thank our listeners of the week. We have Shane and maybe Chris, but definitely MG, who went to www.mb, whatever. I'm dyslexic at this time of night. 11:29, my apnea is catching up with me. No, she's in the other room. I'm going to start calling her my apnea. I've already told her this story. She's like, I'm your apnea? I'm like, yes. You are my apnea. Stop waking me up. MB. So thank you, Shane. Thank you, MB, for going to www.avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and leaving us a PayPal donation. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Shane, MB. If you're Chris, thanks, Chris. If you're not Chris, thanks, MB. And thanks, Shane, for sure.
And thank you, our 54 patrons, including Adriano, who went to patreon.com/AVRant podcast and signed up for a monthly donation to this podcast. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Yeah, thanks so much to our 54 patrons. Thanks, Adriano, for being one of them.
I want to thank Chris and Dave for talking us up to various manufacturers, including Accessories for Less, and I guess Dave talked us up to his listeners, as well as Bosco, who let APC and Sewell know that he purchased because of us. So thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, Chris, very much hope that Denon S530 works out well for your sister. Thanks for talking us up to Accessories for Less. Congrats on the Monoprice sub purchase as well. Dave, Don, I'm going to start listening to your podcast, so I'll be able to figure out if you drop a bunch of F-bombs or not. That'll be cool.
Please don't.
But thanks for the links on your website. And Boschko, thank you very much for talking us up to APC and to Sewell.
All right. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AV Rant.
Now go out and listen to something.